Hello students. As a practicing physician, many a times the physician is presented with patients complaining of tingling and numbness in the upper and lower limbs. These patients, though majority of them are either known or unknown cases of diabetic neuropathy, but some of the cases may be of motor neuron diseases also. To find out such kind of diseases and to come to pinpoint diagnosis, nerve conduction studies are very helpful. So physicians usually do nerve conduction studies to find out any neurological problems particularly affecting the peripheral nerves to find out the diseases. Hello students, I am Dr. Gitesh Dubal and let's start with the today's practical on nerve conduction study. So nerve conduction study is battery of investigation to evaluate the function of motor and sensory nerves in the human body. Now usually when the physician prescribes this kind of investigation they write NCV, which represents nerve conduction velocity. But you have to keep in mind that nerve conduction velocity is just one of the tests of a series of investigations that are found in the nerve conduction study. So nerve conduction study is a large set containing number of laboratory investigations. Out of that the NCV is the most important one. To understand the principle of nerve conduction velocity, you have to go to the physics where velocity is defined as distance upon time. This you might be knowing from your physics classes. So here the principle is also similar, very easy. What we do is we stimulate one of the nerve with a stimulating electrode at one point. Now this impulse is created at this point and this impulse travels down the nerve, and there is a recording electrode at another point far away from the stimulating electrode. So the distance between the stimulating electrode and the recording electrode is the distance. Okay, and the time taken for the impulse to travel from the stimulating electrode to the recording electrode is the time. In the medical terminology it is known as latency. So we know the distance, we know the latency, so we get the nerve conduction velocity. So this is the principle how we find out the nerve conduction velocity of various nerves. So what are the uses of nerve conduction studies? It is used for evaluation of paresthesias, that means the numbness, tingling and burning sensation of the arms and legs, and this is usually a common presentation of the diabetic neuropathy patient. Diabetic neuropathy is just a complication of diabetes on long-term basis. Now sometimes a particular test within the nerve conduction study is been given or prescribed based on the type of symptoms that the patient presents. Now some of the symptom presentation is the patient will have numbness and weakness. The patient may have local symptoms, that means only one arm or one leg is having a numbness and tingling. Then the condition is of mononeuropathy. If multiple arms and legs are being affected, then it is a case of polyneuropathy. This is usually a presentation of diabetes patient. Now these nerve conduction studies are not only helpful in diagnosis of diseases, but it also has a prognostic value. That means we can find out whether the disease has progressed on the late stage or early stage or mid stage. Not only that, it is also helpful whether the treatment that is given for a particular disease is effective or not. So it is having a prognostic value also. So these are the various uses of nerve conduction studies. Now, common disorders diagnosed by nerve conduction studies are peripheral neuropathies. Mononeuropathy means affecting only the single nerve. Most commonly, it is carpal tunnel syndrome, commonly seen in females. Mononeuritis multiplex, which includes vasculitides, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus erythematosus, that is SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, sarcoidosis, leprosy, Lyme's disease, amyloidosis, and polyneuropathies affecting many nerves. Usually it is diabetic neuropathy, a common long-term complication of diabetes mellitus. Then it also diagnoses the myopathies like muscular dystrophies, that is facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, myotonia, congenital myopathies, metabolic myopathies. Then radiculopathy means affecting the nerve roots. So it is inflammation or damage to the nerve roots, which usually is caused by the herniated discs, and that can also be diagnosed by nerve conduction studies. Then disease of neuromuscular junction, most common is myasthenia gravis. So these are the common disorders which are being diagnosed by the nerve conduction studies. Now let's see what is the procedure to conduct the nerve conduction study. Let's move to the next slide. So basically there are three components of nerve conduction studies. One is the set of electrodes, then there is a stimulating electrode, and last there is a transducer. There are three sets of electrodes which are used. One is the active electrode. This black one is the active electrode which actively records the signals that are received Then this red one is the reference electrode, and this green one is the ground electrode that nullifies the background signals that may be arising from various other muscle stimulation. So these are the three electrodes which are used for nerve conduction studies. The skin is clean and the electrodes are either tapped or a jelly is applied to the electrode and then attached to the skin, so that there is a enough conduction through the skin. Then a stimulating electrode is provided like this, and this stimulating electrode strength is usually varies from 5 to 40 milliamperes, and the current is applied to the nerve directly. That is the stimulating electrode. Then this impulse through the nerve is being recorded and transmitted to the active electrode. The transducer is present which are attached to these electrodes. So a transducer is present. This transducer converts the analog signal that is obtained from the active electrode and converts into digital signal and amplifies it and present in a waveform on the computer monitor. So this is the process of nerve conduction studies recording. So what are the references which we obtain from the findings of the nerve conduction studies? So if the nerves are damaged or if there is a demyelination, what will happen? The current that will be shown, the current waveform that will be shown on the monitor will be slower. So the latency will be more and it will be weaker. That is, the height or the amplitude of the waveform will be lower. So that is the inferences that we can draw from the nerve damage or demyelination. The whole procedure takes about 30 to 90 minutes, and there are no such any complications from these procedures, except that the person will feel discomfort because of the electric shocks that he will receive during the stimulation. Now this thing need to be mentioned to the patient prior to the performing this test. So if this information is given to the patient prior to the test that is conducted, the patient will feel comfortable and will not have any problem. So what are the benefits of nerve conduction studies? First and foremost benefit is it is a not an invasive procedure, it is a non-invasive. So the skin is not penetrated, so the compliance of the patient is increased. There are no contraindication of this procedure, but if the person is having artificial pacemaker in the heart or in the brain, then it to be, and this thing need to be considered before performing the test, so that the electrical stimulation that is given is not affecting the pacemaker. No anesthesia is used during this procedure, no special post procedure is also done, so the patient can immediately leave after performing the test. And along with the NCV, electromyography is also being conducted to further assess the function of the muscles. So we are assessing the function of the muscle also, we are assessing the function of the nerves also. Now, if you remember, in the first slide itself, I had said that most of the doctors say it is NCV and not NCS, because nerve conduction velocity is the most important component of nerve conduction studies, but it is not only component of nerve conduction studies. So here, if you see, the first component is compound motor action potential, or CMAP, also known as motor nerve conduction study, and sensory nerve conduction potential, or SNAP, also called as sensory nerve conduction studies. This both the motor and sensory component are included in nerve conduction velocity, that is NCV. The rest of these are not the part of NCV, but they are part of nerve conduction studies. These are F wave study, H reflex study, axon wave study, blink reflex study, and direct facial nerve studies. Now these are some of the advanced states of the nerve conduction studies. So we'll not be discussing here because of the time limitation, but we will discuss the nerve conduction velocity, which includes the compound motor action potential and sensory nerve action potential. So in motor nerve conduction studies, we are studying the peripheral motor nerves, and these peripheral motor nerves are compound motor nerves. So there are various types of motor nerves combined into a single nerve. So that is why it is known as compound evoked potential that is obtained from the motor point. The time taken for the electrical impulse to travel from the stimulating side to the recording side. So if this is the stimulating side and this is the recording side, the time taken to reach from stimulating side to recording side is being measured, and that is termed as latency, as I had said in the first slide itself, and it is measured in milliseconds. And the size of the response, that is the amplitude, is measured in millivolts. So whatever the recording is obtained from the recording electrode, that the amplitude is measured in millivolts. And usually you stimulate at the two sides. So if you stimulated one side, you stimulated another side. So these 2 points are taken as a stimulating point, and from both of these the latency and amplitude is taken, and from that the nerve conduction velocity has been derived. So the motor nerve action potential that is recorded determines the integrity of the motor unit. Now this kind of graph is obtained. As you can see, this is a stimulus artifact. This kind of wave is formed when we apply the stimulus. Then this straight line is the latency or the latent period, and this waveform is obtained. This is the duration of the compound motor action potential, and then it again reaches the baseline. So this kind of graph is obtained in the compound motor action potential curve. Now, it cannot distinguish between the pre and post ganglionic lesion. The reason is that we are stimulating after the nerve is emerging from the spinal cord. So we are stimulating at this point. The nerve is emerging in the spinal cord. So we are stimulating after the ganglion has been produced. So that is why we cannot distinguish between pre and post ganglion lesion from this kind of graph. So compound motor action potential does not distinguish between the pre and post ganglionic lesions. Now another finding that may be commonly found is this compound motor action potential may be abnormal, but sensory nerve action potential may be normal. Now when this happens if the lesion is proximal to the dorsal root ganglion. So that is why the snaps are normal, or it may be because it is only affecting the motor nerve. So if it is only affecting the motor nerve, then compound or CMAP will be abnormal and SNAP will be normal. Or if it is proximal to the DRG, then again the same situation is seen. Another thing you need to keep in mind is that the active, that is the black electrode, and the reference, that is the red electrode, should not be kept too close to each other. If they are too close to each other, then it will nullify the waveforms and the waveform amplitude will be smaller. So if you, in this one, first one is a normal one because the reference and active electrode are far apart, but if they are too close, then this kind of waveform is formed. A very small amplitude waveform will be formed, and you might confuse that it is because of nerve damage. It is not because of nerve damage, but here the active and reference electrode are very close to each other. That is why this small waveform is formed. Otherwise, when they are of sufficient far away distance, this normal waveform is formed. So this thing you need to keep in mind while conducting the nerve conduction velocity. So what are the sites for motor nerve conduction studies? In the first is the median nerve of the right and left arm. Here it is wrist and elbow. Usually the muscle that is stimulated is abductor pollicis brevis. Then ulnar nerves, right and left arm, wrist and elbow. Usually the muscle is first dorsal interossei and abductor digiti minimi. Then peroneal nerves of right and left leg, ankle on the ankle region, as you can see from the ankle region, and the head of fibula. In the head of fibula, we are stimulating. Usually the muscle that is stimulated is extensor digitorum brevis and tibialis anterior. Then tibial nerve, right and left leg. So you can see in the ankle region, mostly it is usually stimulating the ankle region, and the muscle that is stimulated is abductor hallucis and abductor digiti quanti pedis. Now in sensory nerve conduction studies, we are testing the sensory nerves. Now it is performed by electrical stimulation of the peripheral nerves and recording from pure sensory portion of nerve, such as usually on the fingers, recording is done. And the recording electrode is placed distal to the stimulating electrode. Now because the impulse in sensory nerves travels from the axon to the cell body, and now we are stimulating the axon, and recording is done on the nerve ending. That is why it is known as antidromic nerve conduction studies. In the motor nerve, it was known as orthodromic nerve conduction recording, but here it is the antidromic nerve conduction recording is done. Like the motor studies also, the sensory latencies are the scale of milliseconds, and sensory amplitudes are much smaller than the motor amplitudes. So usually it is in microvolts. In motor, it was in millivolts. Now sensory nerve conduction velocity is calculated based upon the latency and the distance between the stimulating and the recording electrode. Now sensory nerve conduction studies help in localizing the lesions which are present in the DRG or post DRG. So if there is a lesion in the DRG, in the cell body, in the spinal cord, or post DRG, that is dorsal root ganglion, then it will show abnormal snaps. But if the lesions are proximal to the DRG, that is it is beyond or before the DRG, and it is in the spinal cord but it is before the DRG, then the snap will be normal. So that you need to keep in mind. If the lesion is in the DRG or post DRG, then snap will be abnormal, but if it is pre DRG, then snap will be normal. It is because the axonal transport occurs from the DRG to the nerve terminal. So that is why the snap is normal. Now snap are typically more sensitive than CMAP in incomplete peripheral nerve injury because of its antidromic nature. Now antidromic studies are have some benefits. Which are the benefits? First is it is easier to record compared to the orthodromic studies. They are less uncomfortable because the amplitude of stimulation or the strength of current that is required to produce a response is less compared to the motor studies, and they have larger amplitudes. So here there is a typical finding that are obtained in SNAP compared to the CMAP. That is why they are much more sensitive than CMAPs. So this is a diagram of how sensory nerve conduction action potential are recorded. So here the stimulating electrode is on the median now, and these are the surface electrodes. Even the ring electrodes are placed on the finger. So the median nerve is stimulated with the stimulating electrode. The current passes through the finger nerves, and the recording is obtained on the monitor. So here you get the latent period, and here you get the amplitude of the action potential. So this is how the action potential is recorded in the sensory nerve conduction action potential recording. So what are the sites of sensory nerve conduction studies? The median nerve of the right and left arm. As you can see, the stimulating electrode is present between the two tendons in the wrist area, and the electrodes are placed in the index finger or in the thumb. The ulnar nerves of right and left arm. Here you can see the stimulating electrode is on the medial side, and the recording electrode and the reference electrode are placed on the ring finger. Then the sural nerves of the right and left leg. Here the stimulating electrode is on the back of the calf, and the recording electrodes and the reference electrode is placed on the lateral malleolus. Then the saphenous nerves of the right and left leg, as you can see here on the shin area, and the recording electrode is placed on the anterior to the medial malleolus. So these are the sites of sensory nerve conduction studies. So this kind of graph is obtained on the monitor. As you can see, this graph has the latency, and this is the upward and downward deflection representing the amplitude of the graph of sensory action potential that is obtained. This is the second graph of amplitude of action potential. It is stimulated at two sites, and this kind of two graphs are obtained, and here we get the results of the latency and amplitude respectively. So what are the interpretations that can be obtained depending upon what kind of result is obtained? The nerve conduction speed or the nerve conduction velocity will be proportional to the diameter of the nerve, directly proportional. So if the diameter is more, the nerve conduction velocity will be more, and also to the degree of myelination. So myelin sheath is a type of insulation around the nerve. So if there is a myelination is present, sufficient myelination is there, the nerve conduction velocity will be more. If there is a demyelination or lack of myelination, or there is a damage to myelin sheath, then the nerve conduction velocity will decrease. So this is how we interpret the nerve conduction velocities. Normally functioning nerve will have stronger and faster signal than the damaged nerve. This is the common principle or understanding of the nerve conduction velocity. What is the normal finding of nerve conduction velocity? Normal finding of motor nerves or sensory nerves usually hovers around 50 to 60 meters per second. So if we know the latency and the distance, we can find out this value, and usually that is calculated by the software itself, and we get the finding of 50 to 60 meters per second. However, the normal conduction velocity may vary from individual to individual and each nerve to nerve. So this is not a fixed value, but usually it is in range of 50 to 60 meters per second. So interpretation of the conduction is complex, but in general different pathological processes results because of the change in the latency and the amplitude, which ultimately results into slowing of the nerve conduction velocity. So our ultimate finding is if the value is less than 50 meter per second, there are chances that the nerve is being damaged. Either there may be lack of myelination or there may be discontinuation of the nerve. So finally, to conclude, if we give some examples of most common findings in the patients, if there is a slowing of the nerve conduction velocity, it is usually because of the damage to the myelin. If there is a slowing of nerve conduction velocity around the wrist, particularly the motor and sensory latencies are slowed down, then the case is of that carpal tunnel syndrome. As I said, it is most commonly found in the females. But if there is a slowing of the nerve conduction velocity in more than one limb, and it is a kind of a generalized peripheral neuropathy, then it is a case of diabetic neuropathy. So this is the common presentation of the patients in nerve conduction studies. Now let's see one of the demo video how the nerve conduction velocity has been recorded. So finally students, it's the MESL time. The MESL is I can detect DRG or post DRG lesions. I am antidromic in nature. I am more sensitive than CMAP. Tell me thy, who am I? Please tell me the answer students in the comment section below, and please like, share and subscribe to my channel to see more videos like this. Thank you patiently listening to me.